This is Homeschool 101, a collaboration between ABS Television and the Ministry of Education. Stay attentive and attempt all activities. And now, today's lesson.
Hi everyone, welcome to Homeschool 101. I am Latoya Reynolds, food, nutrition and health teacher, and our topic today is digestion. Digestion is a very important process. And we might ask, why is digestion so important? So let's take a first look at our objectives today. By the end of this session, we should be able to do three things. We should be able to define these terms: digestion, mastication, absorption, bolus, peristalsis, and chime. We should also be able to identify the four main parts of the digestive system. Lastly, we're going to discuss what happens in these three areas: the mouth, the stomach, and the small and large intestines. Let's begin. Note well. It's important for you to have pen and paper at this time so that you can make records of descriptions and definitions that will be useful. What is digestion? Digestion is a process by which insoluble food is made soluble by breaking them down chemically and mechanically, so it can diffuse through the structures in the gut wall. Undigested bits are defecated as feces. Where does digestion begin? Digestion begins in the mouth. What happens in the mouth, you may ask? Well, mechanically, we chew our food, and our tongue helps to combine this chewed food with saliva. And as it is chewed and mixed with saliva, we then create what is called a bolus. Here are some of our very important terms. Saliva. Saliva is secreted by the salivary glands found in the mouth. Mastication. To grind or crush food with teeth through the action of chewing. And bolus. A bolus is a small mass of chewed food ready to be swallowed. So let's take our first experiment. Let's create a bolus. Now, some of you at home may just prefer to chew it up yourself and expel it on a piece of paper towel. However, in studio today, we are going to follow our scientific protocol. We have 3 tablespoons of water, which represent saliva, and we're going to add it to our crackers, a bit of food that we eat normally as West Indians. What's next? We're going to crush this food as if we were chewing it. Be sure to get the air out of your bag so that you are able to crush your bits without bursting your bag. Keep going. Remember not to swallow if you're chewing, and if you're squeezing, be careful. We now have a nice soft paste, which accurately, I believe, represents crackers if they were actually chewed in our mouth. So we can call this our bolus. Now, for it to pass down our throat and into our esophagus, it would need to be a rounded ball. Much like what is displayed here. So here we've made our bolus. Now, it's important for us to note that within the mouth, as we chew our food, our saliva contains an enzyme, which is called salivary amylase. And this enzyme works on cooked starches. It breaks it down, and that's the only form of chemical digestion that takes place in our mouth. We'll set our bolus aside. Now we have some questions to answer. What is the difference between the original state and the bolus that we created? You should write that down for your reference. Say how it feels, how it looks. Next, describe the state of the chewed substance. Does it hold together? We've already demonstrated that it does. Is it runny? No, it's not. Describe the consistency. Are the particles large or small? And I believe our particles are small because we can spread them a bit and see that they're very tiny particles as opposed to the original product. So we'll set these two aside and continue. We continue. The bolus travels down our throat and to our esophagus, which is a long tube leading to the stomach. And through the action of peristalsis, it enters the stomach. Now, what is peristalsis? All along the alimentary canal, the walls alternately squeeze and relax on the food, gently moving it along. This is known as peristalsis. So this action actually squeezes our food down into the stomach, and it continues squeezing the food until it gets to the end of the alimentary canal. Now, your alimentary canal begins in your mouth and it continues to the stomach. What happens in our stomach? Well, here in the stomach, the food is squished and squashed by the muscular walls of the stomach. And it mixes our food with our gastric juices. Gastric juices are made in the glands within the stomach wall where they're secreted. It's important for us to know that within the stomach is quite acidic. There, the digestion of protein begins with the protease pepsin and is the only form of chemical digestion that takes place in our stomach. As the food is mixed with the gastric juices, it creates what is called chime. Chime is a pulpy fluid which passes through the stomach to the intestine, consisting of gastric juices and partly digested food. Let's make some chime. So, we would add to our bolus our lemon juice and water mixture, which represents our gastric juices. We are going to place our crackers, even though not our bolus, because we want to maintain the bolus so that we can have it for comparative purposes. This is becoming quite technical. So here we have some bits and pieces. For those of us who don't chew our food properly, the pieces can be quite large. So that brings us to a very good point. It's always important to chew your food well, so you can get the smoothest bolus possible. The smaller the particles, the easier for them to be digested. Okay, so we've created our pulpy liquid. We have our bolus. Well, actually, one is our cracker. 2 is our bolus, and 3 is our pulpy liquid, known as chyme. So this is what moves from our stomach into our small intestines. Let's make a record of how our liquid looks, how it behaves, as compared to our first mixture. So we moved on now through peristalsis from our stomach to our small intestines. Most of digestion takes place here in our small intestine, and it's divided into 2 parts or 2 portions. Your small intestines are very long. It is hypothesized that they might be actually 6 times your height. And the walls of the intestines are folded. This helps to mix food with digestive juices. In the first part of the small intestines, food is mixed with the digestive juices. What are our digestive juices? We encountered some digestive juice in our mouth, and that's called saliva. Our gastric juices were introduced in our stomach. And our first digestive juice, which is introduced in the small intestine, is bile. Bile is produced by our liver and stored in a sac called the gallbladder. It is introduced in the beginning of the small intestine, and it does not contain any enzymes, but rather bile salts. Why are these bile salts so important? They break up fats and oils, allowing the enzyme lipase to work more efficiently. This facilitates mechanical digestion within the small intestine. Here we have a cross-section of the small intestine, and we can see the folds that were mentioned before. We continue with our digestive juices. We have pancreatic juice. This is made by the pancreas and enters the first portion of your intestines, where it makes conditions alkaline for the protease pepsin, and also contains amylase and lipase. So chemical digestion takes place on foods of all kinds. Intestinal juices. This is made by glands in the intestine wall and contains lipases, amylases, and proteases. Note that they are all plural because they're different ones. To complete the digestion of all foods by producing the end product of fatty acids and glycerol. Fatty acids and glycerol are the byproduct of digested fats. Simple sugars are the byproduct of digested carbohydrates. And amino acids are the byproducts of digested proteins. We move on to the second portion of our small intestine. What happens there? In the second portion of the small intestines, the nutrients from the broken down food is absorbed from the intestine to the body. And how is this done? The soluble end products, fatty acids and glycerol, simple sugars and amino acids, are absorbed via small finger-like projections that cover the small intestines. These projections are called villi and increase the surface area for absorption of food. From there, nutrients are diffused into the blood, where they travel to our organs and are used as energy for all functions. Let's make a note of our special word, absorption. Absorption, the uptake of soluble molecules into the blood via the villi. After food is broken down into small nutrient molecules, the molecules are absorbed by the blood. After absorption, the nutrient molecules travel in the bloodstream to cells throughout the body. This happens mostly only in the small intestine. We're moving to the large intestine. What happens there? When we get to the large intestine, the water is removed from our pulpy solution. that is left after the nutrients have been extracted. We end up with a semi-solid state, similar to the one we began with. And this is made up of all the undigested bits and unusable food that was a part of our meal. Through peristalsis, this is then forwarded to our rectum. Let's recap. What happens in digestion? First of all, food enters our mouth via our oral cavity. It is then chewed and mixed with saliva, and the chewing is referred to as mastication. It moves down our throat and through our esophagus into the stomach. In the stomach, it is mixed with gastric juices and churned to create chyme, which is moved along into our small intestines, here shown in orange. In the first portion of the small intestines, we have the introduction of other gastric juices to help to further digest our food. As digestion and the breaking down of these food happens, they are moved to the second portion of our small intestine, where absorption takes place. Upon the absorption of the nutrients through the villi into our bloodstream, the undigested bits and pieces are moved to our large intestines. Here, the water is absorbed and we're left with only the bits and pieces in a pulpy fashion. This mixture is then sent to the rectum to be stored, waiting for our bowel movement, where it is then known as feces and is passed through our anus. So let's answer a few quick questions. What is the digestive system? A, the body's breathing system. B, the body's system of nerves. C, the body's food processing system. D, the body's blood transporting system. And if you answered C, you were 100% correct. Number 2, where does food pass through between the mouth and the stomach? A, the esophagus. B, the rectum. C, the small intestine. D, the large intestine. If you answered B, you would have been 100% incorrect. The answer is A, the esophagus. 3, where does the partly digested food in liquid form go after it leaves the stomach? A, the esophagus. B, the appendix. C, the small intestine. D, the large intestine. If you answered C, the small intestine, you would be correct. Number 4, how does digested food finally reach the bloodstream? A, it passes through the esophagus into the blood. B, it is absorbed into the blood through blood vessels. C, it is absorbed into the blood through the walls of the lungs. D, it passes from the small intestine into the large intestine, then into the blood. And the answer is B. It is absorbed into the blood through blood vessels. Number 5, the digestive system processes food into usable and unusable material. The usable material are sent to the body's cells as food. What happens to the unusable material? A, it goes into the pancreas to await disposal. B, it goes to the right ventricle to await disposal. C, it goes to the large intestine to await disposal. D, it goes to the small intestine to await disposal. If you answered C, you are correct. 6, digestion takes place in a long tube-like canal called the alimentary canal. or the digestive tract. Food travels through these organs in the following order. A. Mouth, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, rectum. B. Mouth, esophagus, stomach, large intestine, small intestine, rectum. C. Mouth, stomach, esophagus, small intestine, large intestine, rectum. D. Mouth, stomach, esophagus, small intestine, large intestine, rectum. So here, if you have A or C, you would have been correct. Lastly, number 7. Which of the following does not manufacture digestive juices? A. Your liver. B. Your kidneys. C. Your stomach. D. Your pancreas. If you answered B. Your kidneys, you would have been 100% correct. Fun facts. Some fun facts about digestion are: eating foods rich in fiber help your food to move along the alimentary canal more easily. Food stays in our system on average 24 hours. It may be longer for some, it may be just a bit shorter, but usually 24 hours. The alimentary canal begins at your mouth and it ends at your anus. Did we achieve our objectives? Were you able to describe digestion, mastication, absorption, bolus, peristalsis, and chime after today's session? Are you now able to identify the 4 main parts of the digestive system, being the mouth, the stomach, the small intestines, and the large intestines? Are you able to discuss what happens in the mouth, the stomach, and the small and large intestines? Are you able to identify the mechanical and chemical processes in all 3? To close, now that we've been introduced to digestion, it is important that we use this knowledge to help us plan accurately for persons who may have compromised digestive systems, those persons who are convalescing, or persons who are suffering from chronic illnesses. What's next? What's next is that you move on to study other areas in alignment with your CSEC syllabus. Be sure to study the digestion of each macronutrient, which is carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. You should also know the enzymes needed to digest each. And you should also be aware of the digestive juices that act on each. Thank you for coming to this edition of Homeschooling 101. I am Latoya Reynolds, your food, nutrition, and health teacher for this topic. See you next time.
You've been watching Homeschool 101, a partnership between ABS Television and the Ministry of Education. Thank you for viewing this lesson. Join us again next time.